Hello, everyone. Our next panel coming up is called Interop, or Die Trying. I think we all can agree that making Web3 technology more interoperable and more usable for everyone is very important. And so I'm very happy to introduce you to Margaux from CoinDesk.
Hi. So today we're going to talk about the interop problem, or the interop solution, I should say, the fragmentation problem. But maybe we can first get everyone on stage, because they're the experts. I'm just going to ask the questions. Okay, great. Well, why don't we start first with, a little introduction about yourselves, a quick, 20 seconds. Who are you? What do you do? And why are you here?
I'm Jess Houlgrave. I'm the CEO at Tryin. We're the builders of the Wallet Connect network, which is a network that allows over 700 different wallets to connect with some 15,000 different applications. And I guess I've been invited here because chain abstraction and thinking about liquidity fragmentation and how we work with wallets and apps to make a better user experience around that particularly is a big focus for us.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? I'm Ben, one of the co-founders of Optimism. We're building the superchain, the OP stack. So, we're responsible for the problems that we're going to be solving on this stage, I suppose, in part.
We all are, I think. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I'm James, head of marketing at Across Protocol. You know that song, "One of these things is not like the other"? I feel like that's where I am in this group. I'm among some heavy hitters, but really just proud to be on stage here. The work we're doing is all around cross-chain interop. So you know us as a bridge, but really probably some of the bigger work that we're doing behind the scenes is working with 7683, the Intense protocol, helping to make bridging easier and faster.
Hey everyone, I'm Steven. I'm co-founder and CEO at Off-Chain Labs. We build Arbitrum, which is a layer 2 platform, as well as Prism, which is a layer 1 consensus client. And recently, we've been taking a large focus on interoperability and building interop standards that can connect chains quickly, and doing a lot of work with other folks up here, including Across to a large degree. So excited to be here today.
Great. So we talked a lot about all the different things you guys do and what you can contribute to this, to solving interop. But let's back it up a little bit to how we arrived at this problem. Let's start maybe in 2020 with the Ethereum-centric, the roll-up-centric roadmap that Vitalik introduced, the Ethereum community embraced. It led to the creation of all these different L2s and solved the scalability issue. But as a result of that, a new problem emerged, which is this fragmentation, this clunkiness in a user experience. And so now we're here today to solve interop, or you guys are here today to solve interop. But let's start with then, how existential is this fragmentation issue right now? On a scale of, 1 to 10, where are we in terms of how big of a problem is this? Anyone can go for it if you have any opinions.
I don't think it's existential actually at all. I think that's more of a narrative point, and I think it's a narrative point that's actually pushed by some Ethereum competitors, to be honest. So I think it's a real thing we need to focus on. But I actually think it's a strength, right? Because Ethereum's core power and strength is its diversity and the experimentation that we have on chain, right? So you have, we build Arbitrum, you have Ben here who builds Optimism. There could be 15 other people here who are building, competing products to us, and that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And it turns out, though, if we only had a single development team, you wouldn't have fragmentation. You wouldn't have this issue. So it's a two-sided coin. But if I had to take, a choice, I'd take, all right, let's take the diversity, let's take the experimentation, because I want that to happen on Ethereum, because I definitely don't think we've reached the end goal of blockchain technology. I don't know which set of experiments it will be, but I think one of them, if we look forward 5 years, the blockchain won't look like it looks today, and that's going to come from the experimentation that we're doing. So it's a problem, but it's a problem that comes from a very, very good place, and I'd much rather have that problem than not have, than only have a single team building. And we can fix it, and we know how to fix it, and we're working hard on actually fixing it, and I don't think it's actually existential.
I mean, I'll try to throw a number to it. By the way, I totally agree that every competitor to Ethereum is heavily incentivized to overstate the concern and like basically concern troll about this problem. At the same time, like there's a reason that this is one of the main concern trolls that comes about from Ethereum, is I think because there's a degree of legitimacy to it, and certainly like agree with Steven, I'd make the bet, I'd make the trade every single time. But I don't know, you want a number? I'll throw out, it's like time scale dependent. I think, I don't know, my mind says like 6, 7 today. If we looked the same at the end of 2025, I might go to like 8, 9. I'm like, I think we're making a lot of good progress. If that doesn't pan out, I'd be real worried.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, well, that's interesting, and I want to get into that later, but that sets things up for, you know, we have 2 competitors here on stage. A lot of people in this space are competing for the same users, for developers to build on your platform. So how do you sort of square building the best user experience within your own ecosystem while also trying to provide a way to jump to these different ecosystems, but also there's these 2 sort of different ideas that on the one hand like have a lot of synergies together, because I guess if you are providing the best user experience by being able to access these other ecosystems, they should like your product more. But on the other hand, what do you do if the other product is more superior, right? If the other chain is, it just, I don't know, works better for building. So how do you sort of square those 2 different experiences? The same goes for wallets. Like how do you deal with that side of being a business, but also providing for the rest of the community this like seamless experience?
I mean, I think one of the you have these 2 different audiences, right? When you're building a chain or somewhere for builders to build, you've got the developer community that you're targeting, who are typically less impacted because they're making a decision. I'm going to build on Optimism. I'm going to build on Arbitrum. Where the pain, I think, is really felt today, and I think it is an issue because I think it especially is really painful for new people coming into the ecosystem, is that I, as an end user, I just want to use an application. I want to use something that brings me joy. It solves a pain point. I just want to pay for stuff with my crypto. And if you start explaining, especially to somebody who's new to this space, like, oh yeah, that USDC, you can't use that because that's on a different chain. You need USDC on this chain in order to be able to buy your coffee. Like, their head just explodes. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really like at this end user space, and that's why a lot of the solutions that are being proposed enable both the choice for developers, but also solve the end user issue. And it should be, I think, very invisible to the end user which application the chain is being built on at most points. Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, I think, as someone who literally sitting between Ben and Steven, and we do that as across, like we're between these chains, the end user is the person we're serving, right? Like we're trying to make it easier for them to move liquidity from one chain to the next and have access to whatever it is that they're trying to do on chain. The faster it is, the cheaper it is, the better it is for that user. When I think about like trying to explain to my dad, for example, who's not a dummy, like he was an early adopter to the internet when it came out. Like he was I remember standing in line at Best Buy to buy our first computer for the home, and he can't quite understand the same issue that Jess just said. Like, it's USDC, why can't I just use it? And that's really, I think, where the end state needs to be. If we're going to serve our users, we should let them choose. Are they on Arbitrum? Are they on Optimism? Are they on Base? Or wherever they want to be, based on the apps that are available to them. But we should make it that it's just so seamless that they can do that without even thinking about it.
Yeah, when I think about building interoperability, I don't think about like how do I best connect Arbitrum chains. I think how do I best connect the user to whatever chain they want to be on. So we're working together with Across and others in the ecosystem on intent standards, universal intent engine that we put out a few weeks ago. And that's open source code, and that can go on any Arbitrum chain, it can go on any OP stack chain. We're working together as an ecosystem on open intent standards. And the idea is that like, I want to build as many bridges as we can. Whenever I don't want to build any artificial walls. So if there's no good reason why an Arbitrum chain can't interop well with an OP stack chain, then I'm not going to insert an artificial branding reason there. And you might think that's noble of me, but actually I think it's the best product experience for the user, and that's what's going to win, right? Because the user is not going to stay on Arbitrum because I added some friction. They're going to get off Arbitrum, and then it's going to be actually a bad experience for them. If they want to go to a different chain, my goal is, okay, how do I make it as easy as possible for you to get there? And you know what? It's also going to be as easy as possible to get back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
I mean, I'll just echo that for a sec and say, like, in some sense, the premise of the question of like, these are competitors and therefore they're going to put frictions against each other. It's just like Steven said, not the right way to think about it. It's like the best product. The best product is the one where you can get your money out quick. Like that's the way that crypto works. And the other thing I would say is like, even if you just look at the examples, like the entire basis for L2 as an architecture is that you interop with L1. And so it's like already the case that the entire premise of creating an L2 in the first place was because you want interoperability because you want to share network effects. And so like you're just continuing to do that.
Yeah, well, I do, want to talk a little bit about like interop between you bring up interop between the L2 and L1, but also you're standing here right in front of me, and so I obviously am thinking about the super chain, and OP chains are a wide part of the L2 ecosystem. I think I checked this morning of just the rollups that are live. I think it was like 35-ish chains are built off of OP stack. And the super chain is obviously a big part of the ecosystem so that all these different chains can seamlessly interact with each other. But what do you say towards people who make the argument, well, the super chain is uniting its own little ecosystem and also siloing it away from the broader Ethereum network and different L2s? How do you deal with that kind of, maybe it's criticism or just points that people are making?
The fundamental answer is that we need to do both. And I think all ecosystems need to do both. Like, the reality is that absolutely we shouldn't throw up walls where there aren't, but also the architectural decisions that we made to get the diversity and the multiple blossoming ecosystems on Ethereum do imply some degree of technical hurdles that are different across ecosystem boundaries than within ecosystem boundaries. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it's the responsibility of all of us to do both. We need to remove the boundaries whenever we can, and we also need to take advantage of the shared ecosystems when we can as well. I mean, it's like this. Intents help a user bridge across chains, and they do that by offering up a fee. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's completely critical for us to say we need to make those fees go down. Mm-hmm. And if you look at how we're doing superchain interop, it's just easier to do that first within the bounds of the superchain. So it's both. I don't know. I called this the mullet approach at ETHDenver. You've got like intents in the front and settlement in the back. In our view, every ecosystem needs to have really good intents to get everywhere they want, and simultaneously improve the settlement in the back wherever we can.
I love that reference.
We're still trying to get Hart to grow his mullet out, but no dice yet.
I know. I don't want to shave the bangs, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, speaking of intents, one of the core standards that has emerged as being able to solve part of this issue is ERC 7683, which across has helped write or author. So maybe you can explain why this standard specifically has taken off. Why is it being viewed as like a better standard compared to previous ones in terms of like token transfers? And let's start there actually.
Actually, I'm curious what Steven thinks about this first. But I'm going to defer and then answer from my perspective because I'd love to hear what a third party thinks because we've gotten a lot of support. ERC 7683 has over 50 teams and protocols who have said, yes, this is the right way, we're moving forward. Arbitrum and Optimism are part of that. But why? Why did you say yes to us when we said, hey, let's move this forward together?
I think that we, as a community, need a bias towards action for interop. So when we looked at 7683, and by the way, just for those that don't know, 7683 is a intent message format, and then there are other pieces as well. How do these intents, how do you escrow? How do you escrow? How do you actually send these intents from one chain to another? So there are a lot of pieces, and we're actually working together on building out the rest of these pieces as well. But in terms of like the 7683 component, if we looked at it, is good. It does what it's supposed to do, and it works. Now, could we sit in a room for like 3 years and try to like optimize the words on the page and like bicker over every letter? Of course we can, but I think that's where we get into trouble. It's like it works, it's good, it solves the problem. Done. Let's move on. If someone has a better idea, they can propose an upgrade over time. We can iterate, but we need to bias towards action as a community and not just sit in these working groups and okay, let's spend a year figuring out the standard. You put something out there, it works. Awesome, let's move on to the next component, components that we're now working on together.
It's progress instead of perfection. We're not going to stand here and say that 7683 is the perfect solution. It is a solution that we're working together with Ethereum Foundation and many other teams to get better at and to iterate and continue to edit and make better. But it's not perfect today. I think it is probably the best chance that we have for moving forward, but we need more standardization in the space, not less. A lot of the work that the Interop working group at the Ethereum Foundation is doing is to try to unify these teams to say, put aside your differences. The pie is still tiny. And if we're focused on competing over this tiny pie, instead of chasing our holy grail of actually making way for mass adoption, this little pie is just not ever going to be enough. And we have the opportunity to grow that. But we can invite more people. Mass adoption can't happen until we, get our house in order. And that's the work that we're doing.
Yeah, and you guys have been honestly a fantastic partner in just pushing us all forward and making us commit to something. It's something that's really, really good.
So, and building off of that, the open intent framework came out last week, 2 weeks ago. I don't remember, but that's also helped unify a lot of things. So, what are the next steps following that? Like, where this has been announced, this is what people are subscribing to. Like, what are we supposed to expect next from this?
Yeah, so the OIF, or Open Intents Framework, it's largely led by the Ethereum Foundation with a lot of contributors, Hyperlane, for example, Across, and many other teams that are working on this. It's kind of building on top of 7683. It's not in replacement of it. 7683 is a critical part of it. But the work that they're doing is making standardizing the settlement layer, making things more composable and easier for teams to adopt onto. So a good example is if you are a builder and you need to prioritize speed over cost, and speed is the #1 advantage that you're looking for, Open Intents Framework makes it so that you can really optimize for speed, and maybe the sacrifice is on the cost side. And so that's really, it's just another iteration. It's another group of people that are saying, yes, Intents is the way forward, and we have to continue to build on top of that to make it more usable for more builders.
From the wallet perspective, I'm wondering how you guys fit into all this, but also, what kind of compliance challenges or privacy challenges arise from, enabling these seamless interactions with cross-chain transactions? Like, what kind of concerns are there around that?
I mean, for us, because we sit as this network of wallets, I think we are firstly a big believer that standards make it easy for end users to have a seamless experience. I think if everybody's building in very different ways, then the end user experience becomes very, very unpredictable. Also becomes incredibly hard for wallets who are operating across these different things. So I think the standardization approach is critical to success here. A lot of the work that we're doing with wallets on the Wallet Connect network is helping them to figure out the right way to make this easy for their end users. So partnering with people on an abstraction standard that means that the wallet can really easily integrate different technologies. And especially thinking about the end user experience from a UI perspective, what should that look like? We do a lot of work in the payment space, and this has been a massive topic from our payment partners and merchants. It's how does it look as an end user when I have assets on one chain, but the merchant wants them to be able to use them on another? What should the wallet experience look like to offer me the option to select a different asset and go through a single operation in order to be able to deliver something on another chain to the merchant? So I think for us, it's really about what does it look like in not underneath and where all the tech stuff is happening, but what is it really like for an end user, and how does that have an impact?
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to something you said, Stephen, at the beginning, that when I asked about how existential is this problem around fragmentation, and you had said, well, this is kind of a narrative that's being pushed outside the community, which I agree with, but Ethereum is part of a wider community, the crypto and blockchain in and of itself, and the vibes have been down on Ethereum. Solana, whether it's the price token and Solana poaching the most new devs, the vibes are not where they used to be. We can all probably agree on that. And some of those people have referenced the fragmentation issue as part of that. But also, on the other hand, if Ethereum and crypto is trying to go mainstream, it is about meeting the user where they are in terms of adoption and not them coming to you. So I guess if this doesn't get solved, like, or if this does get solved, this fragmentation issue, interoperability becomes more seamless, will this energy, can we expect the energy to come back? Like, if we are tapping into that fragmentation narrative, like, will this all of a sudden, next time, or this time next year, will we, I don't know, be seeing more people because we can, use these different chains, like, seamlessly?
Because I think it's partially a narrative that's pushed by those who have an agenda too. So, no, if we solve it, they're not going to lay down their arms and just say and just say, okay, fine, you're done. They're going to find the next thing. So we're going to have to always fight the narrative battle as well. But I do think this is a big part of it because, as Ben said, there is a kernel of truth here. They're latching on to something real. They're making a bigger deal about it than it is. They're certainly making a bigger deal about it. It's much easier to solve than they want you to think. But fundamentally, I think the way I think about Ethereum's narrative problems, I think we as a community are very long-term thinkers, right? We embark on 7-year engineering projects, and we see them through. Like the merge was a great example of that. Mm-hmm. Our competitors are much shorter-term, growth-first thinkers. And I think the lesson that we have to learn ourselves is, I think the long term is the more important thing, but you can't ignore the short term. Right? You have to actually participate in the narrative of the day. I think seeing the Ethereum Foundation, tweeting more, getting more involved in that conversation, that is important because you're only going to survive to the long term if you actually participate in the short term. So I don't think it's a massive shift, but I think it's a skew, and we do need to take some of that criticism and how do we support everyday builders and make sure that they feel welcome, make sure that they're part of the narrative, and make Ethereum cool again. Mm-hmm.
If I just want to add one thing, we can kind of use the external critique of Ethereum and use that as a scapegoat, but it's also internal. Mm-hmm. I'm a marketer, so I'm going to bring up the narrative side. It's not just fragmentation of infrastructure, it's fragmentation of unity around a narrative. It's so much infighting within the Ethereum community that's preventing progress from happening. It's folks who are resisting joining arms with teams that should be competing, and they're okay with saying, no, we're going to set aside our differences and work toward a new goal to make this better for everyone. We have to clean up inside, too. It's not just the Solana folks who are saying Ethereum is bad. It's internally, we have a lot of infighting that we need to fix.
Yeah, fair. So, we have the last 2 minutes. I wanted to wrap up where we started and hear from each and every one of you. But if the scalability issue, was the big problem a few years ago, and that's been solved, and then because of the scalability issue, we now have this fragmentation problem, and Interop is going to solve it. What is this next issue that might arise from this that we should keep our eyes on? Because sounds like everyone wants to work to do better for Ethereum and for users. And so there's definitely going to be things that come out of this. So what might that be? What are you keeping your eyes on? Anyone can start on this.
I got one. Governance and figuring out what is the proper order of our application topology in crypto. What I mean by that is, I think effectively what you're saying is, once a bunch of this infrastructure gets commoditized, what's next? And the reality is, it's these are all kind of second-order problems today. But the reality is, the open source ethos of crypto and of Ethereum doesn't just, naturally fall out of incentives in all cases. The reality is there are countless different layers of the stack, not layer 1, layer 2, but RPC provider, wallet, block exploit. All of these things are, quite frankly, monopolies or duopolies, or basically have re-centralized due to the natural economics and fallen back into Web 2 patterns. So I don't know. Where I go, when I think about that, I think about basically how are we going to fund public goods? And how are we going to ensure that we don't accidentally recreate all of the monopolies that we accidentally created with the internet, but just on Web3 rails where it's extra unstoppable and extra irreversible and immutable? So to me, that's what it's going to be about. It's going to be once we solve the infrastructure, how do we preserve the identity of crypto and not have it fail just like the internet did?
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to?
You're right. We have a track record of solving one thing, and out of it emerges 10 more problems. I think that this year I'm actually really optimistic that a lot of those things are getting solved, not just around Interop, but with Pectra coming and other things, certainly as the like user experience advocate. I think that that we're going to see a lot this year. I think partly to your point, Ben, on like the governance is an issue, but it's also about like how do we get great builders to want to continue to build products with crypto. And this partly plays into the narrative as well, is like why should you build in crypto? But once we solve these user experience challenges, like there's no good excuse anymore for why users shouldn't be able to use this technology in a really seamless way. And so we need to think about the builders, why both like Web3 native builders should continue to build what they do, but also why the rest of the world should start paying attention and taking this seriously.
Sure. All right, well, I mean, unless you two want to say something, but we're kind of up on time, so I'm happy to wrap it up here. Thank you very much for your time today. It was fascinating, and thank you, everyone, for coming.
Let's give it up for Margaux. Yeah, great moderator.
Thanks, Margaux.
Thank you, everyone.